That's not the paint. Windows are clean.
No, they're not. There's no curtains.
I like pie.
Me too.
Pie is good. Pie is one of the 5 male food groups.
3.14 is a good one.
You know what the male food groups are? Meat, gravy, coffee, salt, pie.
There's like 4 of those can go together in a shepherd's pie. How about pizza pie?
Pie is good, but I digress. As a kid, one of my favorite things was hanging with my grandfather. I like to refer to my adventures with my grandfather as following in his dustbin, because he was a horticulturalist. You see, I was blessed as in my childhood where my grandparents not only worked, but lived on a 3,500 acre estate. And my grandfather was responsible for all the fruit trees. Every Sunday afternoon, I had the ability to roam and create my own adventures. You think I have an imagination now? You know? This grove was a battleship. I could climb trees. I had a crow's nest. It was, we fought pirates. I mean, it was cool. Well, some Sundays, Granddad would have planned adventures. He would call up and say, "Where are your old jeans?" He would come over. And I knew exactly what we were doing. We were going to go berry picking. Now, my grandfather knew where all the berry groves were. But there was a preparation. He'd take you out to the shed, and he would get these big rubber bands and tie off the bottom of your pant legs. And pull your socks up over your pant legs and put the rubber band, because when you're in the berry patch, you don't want snakes and bugs to come up and be able to crawl up underneath your pant leg. Yes, there were snakes. They like berries too. Then he would have these old, sometimes they were work shirts, sometimes they were old flannel shirts, and he'd make you wear these, in the middle of summer, put on these long sleeve shirts, and he would put rubber bands over the edge because you don't want any of the briar patch to get all stickered up, He would put a ball cap backwards on your head because he wants you to protect your head. And then you would go traipsy off with him. You would have this leather strap that he would attach to you where this tin bucket would clip to the front. It's old school, tin bucket that would, you look like something out of, I don't know, a children's novel, And you're traipsing off after him, into the grove, and he'd have his little hat on, the whole 9 yards, and we'd go and we would pick berries. And then we'd come back, and you're carrying your little bucket like this because it's overflowing with blackberries, Then I would go into the kitchen, and my grandma would greet me. She would unclip the little belt thing. She'd put the tin on the counter. She'd pull my ball cap off, and she would mess with my hair, saying, "You're such a good lad. Pull up a chair. We're going to make pie." Then I'd watch her pull out the lard, and she'd have the dough, and she's making a pie with lard. I'm just telling you, it's a wondrous thing. Anyway, and then you would have pie. The Bible says, out of the abundance of our hearts, our mouths should flow. I was sitting there and I was thinking about this verse at work this week. And it really hit me about berries. But these tins, you'd have the stains on your hands and the shirt because you're eating some of the berries as you go, And it's overflowing. I remember trying to help my grandmother lift that bucket thing up on the counter, as a little kid. And look at the berries just overflowing, We did grapes too. We had a grape harbor. We would pick grapes. We didn't make wine, we made jelly, And then we pickled things too. It was kind of a cool thing. But, again, overflowing. We live an abundant life. songs that we sang this morning, that just our hearts are so full. How do we not go through life not wanting to burst? You know? Do you remember Willy Wonka? The girl with the chewing gum? She's chomping and she brings in this gigantic blueberry that they're rolling her down the hallway to the juicing room. That picture, I want you to remember all week that your heart needs to be that big blueberry ready to go. And out of your mouth comes this abundance. You see, Christ is our example in this area. We have something worth sharing. But do we share it? We have something to be incredibly grateful for. But why do we focus so much on what we don't have? Or what goes wrong? Or people's lack of response? Or what doesn't go right? I think we're missing some things. You know, we just finished the series on Joshua. Great series. One of the two of the reasons why Gordon finished the series last week, just a little rabbit trail. One, I just drove back 12 hours overnight, and I'm like, I am not going to be fit to preach. But secondly, it was the message, the last message given. What are you going to do when I die? And I said, I'm not feeling so great right now. I don't want to preach that message and be my last, this is what I want you to do. Anyway, I just thank you for bringing that because it was appropriate. I want you to totally get captured by this thing today. Turn to John chapter 3. There are two stories back to back in John 3 and John 4. And we're not going to really look intently at both the stories. We have the story of Nicodemus, wealthy man, religious man, Jewish leader, came in the middle of the night to check out because he wanted to find out about Jesus. We're going to look at that in just one second. And then we have the story of the woman at the well. Jesus is chilling, hanging out, long journey, putting his feet up, getting a drink, hanging out, and this woman came. And he ended up having a conversation with her. And this week I want you to unpack those stories because it's chalk and cheese, but it's exactly the right thing. Out of the abundance of our hearts, so we speak. Verse 1 of John 3. Now there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. This man came to Jesus by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you're a teacher come from God, for no one can do the signs that you do unless God is with him. And Jesus answers him, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. Nicodemus said to him, how can a man be born when he's old? Can he enter the second time into his mother's womb and be born? And Jesus said, truly I say to you, that unless one is born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. That which is born of the flesh is of the flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit. Do not marvel that I said to you, you must be born again. The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear its sound. But do you not know where it comes from or where it goes? So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit. Now pay attention to this next couple verses. Nicodemus said to him, how can these things be? And Jesus answered him, are you the teacher of Israel, and you don't understand these things? Truly, truly, I say to you, we speak what we know, and bear witness to what we have seen, but you do not receive our testimony. If I had told you earthly things, and you do not believe, how can you believe if I tell you heavenly things? No one has ascended to heaven except that he who is descended from heaven, the Son of Man. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whosoever believes in him shall have eternal life. For God, you see, so loved the world that he gave his only Son, and whoever believes in him should not perish. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order for the world to be saved through him. And whoever believes is not condemned, but whoever does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the Son of God. And this judgment, the light has come to the world, And people love darkness rather than light because their works were evil. And for everyone who does the wicked things hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his works should be exposed. But whoever does what is true comes to the light, and so they may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God. We skip that whole passage. We just hooked it right in John 3:16. But you understand, Jesus is saying here, and he goes on to over the next several passages of these chapters, out of the abundance of your heart so you speak. We have an abundance in Christ. What are we doing with it? We focus on evil. We focus on what we don't have. It's interesting. I was sitting in the back this morning, contemplating, I'll be beginning my 10th year in September. 10th year as a senior pastor. I haven't died yet. And I'm looking out amongst you and I'm thinking, who's not here? Who are we ministering to currently? And I'm sitting back and saying, we're focusing on Christ's plan. We have widows and orphans. If you're a single person today and mama is not in your town, you're an orphan. You're on your own. We have a whole bunch of young people who are on their own. We have a whole bunch of folks that are single parents that we minister to. Widows and orphans. I'm sitting back saying, Jesus said this is what we are supposed to do, except we haven't got the prisoners yet. Well, wait a minute. We minister to alcoholics and people who have a heroin addiction. They are prisoners. So technically we really are ministering to what Christ said this is what his mission is.
And people who really don't love the belief that sin and power to be the topic.
Yes. Thank you. So I'm sitting back saying, wow, that's provided. He's doing it. We fed 7,000 people last year plus, There's some things I want to point out to us about this abundance. We see here that Jesus encountered two radically different people. First in John 3, a wealthy, powerful, educated, influential Jewish leader named Nicodemus. In the next chapter, we see that Jesus had an intimate theological discussion with an outcast, a powerless, thirsty Samaritan woman. Both of these people picture the degrees of people that you're going to have conversations in life. In both accounts, if we pay attention, we can be mentored by the Master and learn to share our faith experiences with others. A friend of mine, Kevin, who wrote a really interesting article about this that I was reading this week, describes our following Christ as following in his dust. A term that I always used with my grandfather. I followed in his dust. Wherever he went, there was a wake. In that wake, I just, I drafted behind him and I went like a little duckling behind him. If we were going to go out and check out the 400 cows, I'd follow him. For the pigs, I'd follow him to the point where he would turn around and say, "You stay there, not safe over here." Our following Christ is a whole lot like that. We're drafting in behind him as he's taking us and leading us on adventures. But we have this abundance that he has birthed in our hearts, that he has set us free, that we have seen light. We have been brought out of the darkness, and our sin has been exposed for what it is, and he has healed us, and he has helped us overcome, and he has shown us that he has paid the price of the way, and we have this rich heritage that he has just poured into us. Now, there are 5 things I want you to grasp this morning, and the first one's this. You've got to start where people are. If you really want berries, you've got to go where the berry bushes are. Everywhere Jesus went, there were people he encountered. Everywhere you go, you are going to encounter people. Nicodemus came to Jesus in the dead of night. The Samaritan woman came thirsty to a well. Out of his abundance, Jesus was ready and able to pour himself into them at that moment. The point that we need to embrace is that Jesus was ready. Imagine a community leader coming to your house in the middle of the night. Or you're at a coffee shop sitting and overhearing a conversation, and you make eye contact and you're invited into the conversation. Are we ready at that moment that the Holy Spirit opens the door to walk through it, and out of the abundance of what God has done in our lives, open our mouths? One of the reasons of doing this message this morning is that I want us to take a deep breath after going through Joshua. We learned so many principles of how to take the land, how to build our lives, how to lay hold of the promises and benefits that Christ is giving us. We don't take advantage of the opportunities. You're saying, like, what are you talking about? Listen, I work a dead-end job. It's thankless. I've discovered that every single person in my company, other than the people that own it, are working second jobs just to make it. Okay? So that's why I define it a dead-end job. It's not a career, it's an opportunity for me to have income to be able to do what I'm doing this morning. But here's the thing. I work in a room that has no more than 6 people every night. Mind you, we have 5 million accounts that we're managing, but I have 6 people. And you know, every single night, I have a spiritual conversation. I'm in my cubicle, and I'm having a conversation about something spiritual. Every night! Now I have to ask myself, am I weird, am I strange, or am I blessed? Well, yes, I am. But I have to ask you, in your goings and comings, in your comings and going, I go to a place like Hobbs or Starbucks, and I'll sit there and I'll have my beverage and I'll have my little book or I'll have my iPad and I'll be reading and something, and somebody will sit down beside me and start having a spiritual conversation, and I look up and we make eye contact, and next thing they know, I've been sucked into the conversation. That doesn't happen to you. Am I weird? Or am I just experiencing true Christianity? You see, that abundance that we have, God has so designed your life that out of the abundance, if you open your mouth, it will flow. And all of us can and should be having conversations like this with the world on a regular basis. You are the light of the world. Second thing. Nicodemus wanted to be born again. He came from an empty religion, and he went on to have a vital, thriving relationship with Christ. The Samaritan woman who was thirsty and needed to be refreshed, where her soul was quenched and enlightened and empowered for the first time. Do we love people enough to talk to them? Or are we just going to let them walk by? And here's a picture I want to paint for you. We are coming to a place where many of us forgive me as I mute my phone because my youngest child is in a mega church for the first time, and she is texting me her responses to what she's seeing. Anyway. She's like, Dad, never mind. Anyway, coming back to this. You and I one day will stand before the throne of grace. You and I are going to stand before God one day. And we're going to see every single person that has walked by us in our life, who we could have, should have, or quite possibly have shared truth with. And some of them are going to be cast into the lake of fire. I'm not trying to guilt you here, I'm trying to give you reality. God so loved the world that He has rearranged your life for people to come across His path. What are we doing with it? You see, we're called to be listeners. In both accounts, Jesus took time to listen to their stories and to their hearts. I believe the greatest sin of our generation is busyness. Busyness is another word for lust. Because you see, we are so hungry that we aren't satisfied with what we have. We are so hunger for being busy that it's never enough. We lust after with a reckless abandonment. You know, we're all guilty. One of the most difficult sins that I ever have to admit to is how, when my kids were young, I didn't handle, I handled their interruptions as interruptions and not stopping out of the abundance of my heart with joy and soaking in what they were wanting to interrupt me over. Working from home was not always a joy and a pleasure because I had my office and I was writing letters, or I was dealing with a phone call, or I was studying, I was breaking something down, and two little faces would come running in the room, whatever nonsense it was at the moment, you know. And sometimes it was nonsense, you know. But I get into a serious mode, and I'm in tune, or I'm in the midst of writing a letter, you know, and I'm in mid-thought, and the door breaks open, and instead of opening my arms, letting them running into it, I was like, I'll be with you in a minute. And I long for those interruptions now. By the way, I just had one, you know, one of those interruptions. And because, except for I really can't respond to it right now. And there's now a hole in my heart that will probably never be filled until I get 7 little boys, you know, that type of thing. But I'll now know what to do with them, you know, as opposed to what I should have done over here. I'm saying all that to say, are we listening to what's going on around us? When you're sitting in Hobbs or whatever coffee shop that you particularly enjoy, and you're hearing a conversation, are you trying to avoid it? When you're at work by the water cooler, the copy machine, you overhear a conversation, and you're so busy that you're trying to avoid it, you know? You belong to an organization, and many of you don't belong to just one organization, but you belong to 16. Are you thinking about the next organizational meeting that you have to go to that's on your calendar, missing out on what's being said at this one that you're currently attending? God took time to listen to their stories and hear their heart. If God Himself took that time, shouldn't we? Which leads us to the next point 3, conversations. In his book, Kevin Haney writes about the different aspects of this. Let me break it down for you. Once you listen to someone, you engage them in dialogue. There's a complexity to this banter. It's also where the average Christian gets locked up in fear. You meet people where they're at. You gently go no further than their responsive truth. And here's how I'm breaking it down. 1, you speak life. When Jesus talked to them about what was on their minds, Nicodemus was interested in who Jesus was. The Samaritan simply desired water. And you and I need to understand that every conversation has a crossroad, that there's an intersection where we begin with that person. But do we have the boldness? Do we get locked up in fear? It's like we come to a screeching halt. Oh my, I might have to open my mouth now. You speak life. You just talk about whatever they're talking about. You get invited into the conversation, just like Christ did with the woman at the well. Second thing you do, you look for opportunity to interject theology. Every conversation has the opportunity to go deeper and engage one's soul. There's a reason why. Neither Nicodemus or the Samaritan knew what was percolating within their heart. You and I must be there willing to take risk. Some of us, it's more natural than others. I'm a natural risk taker. It has gotten me in terrible trouble over the years. But here's the thing. Things will only happen when you ask them to happen. We must be willing to ask the Lord, we must be willing to ask hard questions and then speak hard truth. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you know, when you hear it, Jesus is talking, and now mind you, Nicodemus snuck in the middle of the night to ask him questions about who he was, okay? Jesus got confrontational. Say, I don't understand why. You're a leader of the Jews. You're a religious leader. You've got this degree, you Pharisee, and this, and that, and the other thing. You don't understand this? Jesus got confrontational. Woman at the well, he had the chutzpah to say, hey, I want to meet your husband. And then she said, I really don't have one. He goes, true, you have 6. Blew her away. You know? But he was willing to take the risk to engage. Think about this. You're talking to someone who's Muslim. And you want to go deeper. Now, by the way, if you're a male, talking to a younger Muslim male, everything that I've ever read, and every missionary who does Arab ministries I've ever talked to, tells me one thing: talk to them like a son. Like a father in love would to a son. So as an older gentleman, what do? I talk to him and I ask him the hard questions. Could you explain to me, being respectful, could you explain to me blah? Why? Why this? Why are they taking young children and putting dynamite on them and sending them in and blowing them up? What's the point of that? Yeah. You're going to get some interesting conversations back. But you got to be taking risks. You got to be willing to ask hard questions and really give in love the truth. Jesus was asking hard questions. He moved the conversation forward and deeper. We need to ask the tough questions, but also do it with a gentle heart. When we arrive at this phase, we don't look back or chicken out. We must follow through and give real answers, be clear, direct, and loving. And there is something humbling about having to answer a question that cost you deeply. Parenting cost me deeply. I made a gazillion mistakes. I have counseled hundreds of parents about Big Hug Day. You know what Big Hug Day is, right? You have loaded your child into her dormitory. You have gone to all the stinking parental requirement orientation classes for the second time because you have another daughter at the same university. They go off, you go off, and then you meet up in a prearranged place to give the big hug and walk away. I have helped 100 parents or so to deal with that kind of a moment. It didn't prepare me for me having that moment. But I've had that moment, and it cost me something. And now I can really talk to people about letting go. I can really talk to people about being an empty nester. I have now moved progressively through many of the phases. You were a little still ahead of me. You know, you've married them off, and you've now, you know, I'm in that phase now. Do you really want to marry that jerk? You know? Why are you dating him? You know, I mean, I'm in that phase of my parental experience now, you know? Advice that I've, again, given hundreds of times, and now I'm sitting back saying, but there's no one perfect for my daughter. You know, I mean, I'm in that phase, you know. Protective dad that I am. I'll mature through it. I'll get through it. But it's going to cost me something. You see, in your relationships, you are going to have to understand, and this is where you overcome the fear, that everything that you have gone through costs God everything. And everything that you have gone through has also cost you something. And out of the abundance of your heart, so should your mouth speak. You are rich. You have gone, if you have gone through a divorce, you have paid heavily. If you have lost a child or had a child walk away from faith, it has cost you dearly. If you have been ever fired from a job, and by the way, I highly recommend for our young people to at least get fired once in life. Because if you get fired once in life, you will have that wake-up call of what you need to change in your life.
Fired twice in life.
But out of the abundance of our hearts, we are rich. Not because we have obtained, but because we've been given. Fundamental Christianity has gotten it so wrong. The Bible thumpers of this world, and I was raised as one spiritually, they look at evangelism as an act of intellectual gain. But there are felt needs. There are needs that are physical. There are things that every single... You see, Nicodemus came with questions. The woman at the well came thirsty. She was wanting a drink of water. See, Nicodemus thought he needed theological clarity, more information about Jesus. This was true to a degree, but that what he really needed was to be born again. And Jesus was clear that in a few spiritual adjustments in his life weren't going to be enough. Nicodemus needed a spiritual rebirth. The woman at the well wanted water, but there was a deeper thirst that wasn't satisfied by mere liquids. Every person that we engage has a specific felt need. We must engage where people's longings and desires and dreams are. But under the surface, we also have to be praying and seeing that there is much, much more there. The complexity where we're looking at their lives. As we learn about people's felt needs, we must pray and ask God for insight into their real needs as they're drawn to God. I hear this. In the life of Christ, nothing was off limits. Jesus' ministry ran the spectrum of life. Wealthy Jewish leader, outcast Samaritan woman caught in the act of adultery, lepers, occupying Roman soldiers, drunken partiers, dine with sinners, befriended tax collectors. Now that's pretty, and I was sitting here, by the way, in the midst of planning this message today, I was looking at Christmas. I was looking at our Christmas schedule. I've been lining up additional worship leaders and this stuff, and I was sitting there saying, you know what? Something that we had gotten away from it as a church that was such a blessing 16 years ago was we did an annual community Christmas dinner, and we just invited everybody that we had been ministering to all year long to a dinner. We had the conversation about what would that look like. Would it work now? Well, we got Cub Scouts and parents. We've got alcoholics. We've got druggies. We've got artsy folk. We got college students. We have retired folks, disabled people. We have, who am I missing here?
Those who rely on the pantry.
Those who rely on the pamphlet. We have some homeless people we minister to.
Yes.
And we were just sitting over dinner. My wife and I were sitting, and we're talking about what would that meal look like, and would any of our regular church people show up? And I had to sit back and say, our ministry, collectively, is running the same gamut that Jesus' ministry ran. We've got this broad berth of people in our community that we're serving, that we're blessing, that we're talking to, that we're having conversations with. I have a suspicion there were times when Jesus brought them all together. I think of the time where they all followed him out to the edge of the desert, and he preached, and then he fed the 5,000. I have a suspicion there was a little bit of everybody at that meeting. I really do. If we want to be fruitful, we have to realize that however it comes together, it comes together. Nicodemus became a devoted follower of Christ. He was present at the crucifixion and helped prepare Jesus for burial. Talk about making a disciple. The woman of the well was transformed by Christ and immediately became an evangelist and helped start a revival in her community to the point that it turned the community on its ear. This morning, as I leave you with this, I want you to realize what's in your heart. I want you to realize that what is keeping you from being fruitful and abundant is your level of gratitude. The more grateful you are for all the junk that you've gone through, the more likelihood that you're not only going to have more junk to go through, but you're also going to have more blessings. I want you to look at every single moment of your day as an opportunity to share the abundance. Every single day. Every single moment. Whether you're shopping, I shared this week on Facebook, and a couple weeks ago I was at Giant over at Brookhaven. And I was coming down the aisle. And there's this little kid. He's got to be about 4 and a half in the cart, And he's talking, And he's talking to his mom, and all of a sudden he makes eye contact with me. And his eyes get this big. And he goes, "This is Santa." So that's a conversation for my weight loss on another day. But I look at him and I go, "Don't go on my car. I'm shopping for Mrs. Claus." And I walk on by. And I look back over my shoulder. I need his day. He's just smiling. He's so happy. I blessed him. Out of your abundance, my abundance, out of your abundance, That Grecian formula for your beard is looking awfully healthy now in my closet that I might want to start applying. Anyway.
If only my abundance.
Yes. The point I'm trying to make with that is that every single moment of every single day, you have the opportunity to bless or not bless. Engage in conversation or not engage in conversation. To leave the world a little bit better off than you found it. The challenges we need today is, what are you going to do? We just studied the book of Joshua about taking our world. Are you really going to take your world? Go home, read John 3 and 4. Think about what you're grateful for. Make a list of what you're grateful for. And if you have roadblocks, see myself, see my wife, see Harris, see Gordon, we'll help Dawn. We'll coach you through it. We'll help you through it. Because God has got an incredibly wondrous plan for all of us. But we still have to choose to show up. Father, I pray for my friends this morning that we would be able to just flow in the abundance of life that you've given us. That you're so miraculous, you're so wonderful, you're so stupendous. That, Father, you have met our needs. Lord, may we meet the needs of others. May we just bless people in our conversation. Lord, would you just use us and have your way with us. Lord, it's so fulfilling that we allow you to do so. Calls us to stop and pray. Bless them with your son's name.